Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our second Lean Startup webcast. Today's topic is Beyond Silicon Valley, applying Lean Startup around the globe. I'm Michelle Kimball, the Marketing and Livestream Coordinator for the Lean Startup Conference, which is coming up December 9th through 11th. Please visit leanstartup.co for more information. First, can everyone hear me? Let's see it on the chat stream. Good. Our speakers today are Kevin Dewalt, Takashi Tsutsumi, and Justin Wilcox. Kevin is the founder of SoHelpful.me and other startups. He's an investor, an advisor, and is currently based in Beijing, China. Kevin blogs at kevindewalt.com. Takashi is an investor focused on startups, an evangelist of customer development, and the translator of the 4 Steps to the Epiphany and the Startup Owner's Manual in Japanese. He currently lives in Japan. Justin Wilcox, formerly with Microsoft, is an entrepreneur and leads Lean workshops around the world. Justin blogs at customerdevlabs.com. A few housekeeping notes. We'll take questions from the audience via the live chat. If you'd like to ask a question, please flag it by starting with a Q: before asking the question. This is a 55-minute program, and the recording will be available after this live webcast. Finally, should Kevin disappear from the webcast for a brief period of time, it's expected, as his connection from China is problematic. We'll quickly dial him back in. Take it away, Kevin, Takashi, and Justin.
Nice to talk with you again.
Thanks.
All right, so let's give everyone a little bit of context. Let's go around the room and just let everyone know, basically, what's your relationship with Lean, both inside the Valley and outside the Valley? So Kevin, let's start with you.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to post my comments to the chat room in case anybody can't hear me. So I'm Kevin Dewalt. I have been involved in startups since the late 1990s. Pretty much, every aspect, venture investor, angel investor, founder, early employee. It's sort of what I've done for about 15 years. And 5 years ago, I got involved. I started getting involved in this thing called the Lean Startup movement when I read some crazy guy named Eric Ries writing about it, and was pretty excited about the idea of learning a different way to build companies, and spent a couple years evangelizing the whole movement in the U.S., doing workshops, trying to learn these principles on my own products, organizing meetups, and before I left, I helped the U.S. National Science Foundation roll out the I-Corps program with Steve Blank at Stanford. So Lean Startup is pretty much what I've been breathing for the past 5 years. Currently living in Beijing, China, Dajiahao, where after studying Chinese for 6 months, I started helping entrepreneurs across Asia apply these principles in their own startups. And so Singapore with Justin, the Philippines, across China, and really across the world through my weekly startup help calls, I've been helping entrepreneurs outside the United States try to implement the practices that we were using in the US and in Silicon Valley. And I think there's a lot of confusion about some of the basic tactics and the big picture. And I'm excited today to work with these 2 awesome guys so we can hopefully clear some of this up.
That's great. You're definitely one of the thought leaders in this space, and certainly have an amazing perspective with your international flavor. So Takashi, how about you? What's your relationship with Lean?
Okay, thanks. First let me introduce myself, and I'm Takashi Tsutsumi from Tokyo, Japan, where I'm living now. And first of all, it is a great honor to be as a speaker today. In fact, it's my first time experience to the webcast where there are a lot of audience, but I cannot see, so it's kind of a new experience for me. Okay, and my profession is venture capitalist, and I have been venture capitalist the last 13 years, and I am investing in technology startups mostly, both in Japan and Silicon Valley. And personally, I have been teaching and practicing myself the lean startups and customer development for 7 years. and I do so at variety of places, including startups and universities and municipal incubator, and as well as enterprise, big enterprise. And I do so, and actually I like it because lean startups and customer development help entrepreneur for more success, I believe. And I came to know customer development when I was looking for a more systematic and scientific approach to build a new startup. In fact, I had several startup experience in the past, and some of them succeeded, but some of them failed. But I realized that I didn't have a standard processes to build new startups by talking to customers. And then at that time, I was looking for that kind of a processes or a method in Silicon Valley, where there are a lot of startup activities, and then came across the book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And then Steve Blank, who allowed me to translate the book, his great book, for Japanese entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Great. All right. Well, I live in the Valley now, but my experience with Lean actually starts before that. When I was up in Seattle, I had started a healthcare software company, which we did absolutely the wrong way. We built an incredible, amazing product that nobody wanted. And about 2 years later, we realized it, ran into the 4 steps of the Epiphany, and it's been history ever since. So, basically my relationship with Lean now is trying to help other founders avoid the mistakes that I've made. And I've had the privilege of helping those founders in a variety of places, not just Seattle, but obviously here in the Valley, also in places like Puerto Rico, over in Singapore with Kevin, and helping some folks in Europe as well. So if it's not clear to everyone, I'm going to be asking the questions here, mostly because you should be listening to these two. Kevin and Takashi are really living and breathing Lean outside of the Valley, where I am inside the bubble and drinking all sorts of bubbly Kool-Aid. So with that, let's rock and roll, gentlemen. Let's pretend that I am a Lean entrepreneur. I'm somewhere outside the Valley. I want to hear from each of you, what are some of the challenges I'm likely to face when I'm outside the Valley? So Kevin, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I found a couple things as I started working with teams applying Lean startup in other places. Let me just first off start by saying the key to all this is that the big picture in Lean startup and customer development is still the same. And that is that startups are about discovery and they're about search. And if you can keep that in mind when you hear about specific tactics or ideas, or Ash Moria said to do this or Eric Ries said to do that, just remember that the big picture is what matters, and that's that startups are about search, and it's about searching for a new way to make money and a new business model. And your job is to go out and test and try different ideas and see what works. And if you can keep that in the back of your mind, it'll steer you through most of the rough seas. Let me talk a little bit about some of the specific issues and tactics that I've seen where teams have had challenges. And the first one is that there's a very, and you can even see some of that coming through in the introductions here today. Justin and I are very quick to jump in with how great we are, and the first thing that Takashi says is what an honor it is to be here. So Americans will just, especially in Silicon Valley, there's a culture of, kick down the door and get into somebody's office and let's talk about your problem and roll up your sleeves. And I think Steve Blank has some great quotes where he said things like, unless security is kicking you out of the building, you're not being aggressive enough. You don't want to do that in China. So you can't approach, especially in business settings. Teams that I've worked with have found that you just can't barge into people's offices and set up meetings and say, "Hey, let's talk about your problems." What most of the time, what you will hear, especially in the Far Eastern cultures, is that a lot of people will tell you, well, we don't have any problems, and that could be because they don't know why you're here. They don't know why you're in their office. Did my boss ask you to come here because he's checking on me? It's just not, and people just are not comfortable talking about problems. You can't, batter your way in there. And most of the mentors that you would work with in your sort of local regions are smart enough to realize that. But it's worth keeping in mind that these kind of tactics don't always translate well. So that's one thing. Some of the other points that I'll try to make a little bit quicker are, systematic relationship. Systematic relationships building is key, and that it's really important to have relationships to get into companies. One of the things that I think Takashi is probably more able to speak about than I am is just the difficulty that teams have in getting support for applying lean startup practices. So a lot of times I will hear from people, I want to do lean. I've read your blog, Kevin, but I don't know where to start because my co-founder doesn't want to do it. My investors don't want to do it. My advisors don't understand it. And so what we can talk a little bit about today are about some things you can do to do that. And there's just two other sort of just, more of language issues than anything, or just language and cultural is sometimes the actual words don't translate well. So, if you talk about the words like lean startup, and I forget of course, now I'm going to forget the Chinese word for it, but I'm sure somebody will post it on the stream. But anyway, I forget. Someone will post it. If you're not translated correctly, it can sound like cheap startup, and I've heard that from other cultures as well. So, like, language is very important. And the final thing I'll just mention is that, especially in it's not as true in China, but in some of the other places I've been to, there's an odd sort of deference towards the foreigners, towards the Americans versus your local leaders, and I think that's really a mistake to do that, and that you're better off taking these basic ideas and working within the people of your own, in your community, and listening to them. Guys like, Khalil Corazzo in the Philippines, the people that know these lean sort of practices and know what it's like to be, in his case, in the Philippines. And obviously, Takashi is the best example of anyone who's done that in the world. So I'll sort of stop there, Justin.
Yeah, that sounds great. So speaking of which, Takashi, what do you think? Biggest challenges you see from people trying to be lean outside the Valley?
Yeah, actually, Kevin covered. I share the many points Kevin covered just now. I see difficulty to get customer to talk to in Japan, and also actually. I understand that the lean startup is well proliferated in Silicon Valley, and building a startup in lean way is normal. But outside Japan, outside the Silicon Valley, including Japan, most people do not know lean startups yet. So for them, if your first idea does not work, then they consider you fail. So we have to take care of that before begin implementing a lean method in your startups. Maybe by teaching what you are going to do a little bit, and in any case, we need them to buy in. And some other aspect I didn't hear from Kevin, but I see it in Japan is the people feel difficult to describe value proposition of the product for customers. And in Japan, most people can of course describe the feature of the product or what a product can do, and also the performance, how a product performs. And also people can know whether customer buy it or not. However, most people do not think much about why they buy it, which is the source, or which is exactly the value, and therefore they are not good at describing the value. And I came across this situation many times in teaching and practicing, but recently I interpreted the root cause is that maybe this is because in the country like Japan, most people work for a company that already has a product and the customer for it. So there's no need to think hard about why they buy. So that's why I'm thinking that describing a value prop is difficult for in that kind of regions.
Yeah, great. So I'm hearing definitely a couple themes come through, right? Talking to customers about their problems is difficult, whether it's because it's hard to get to them or whether it's because they just won't talk about problems. I think that's fascinating. And I wonder if that ties in maybe a little bit to the difficulty describing a unique value proposition, right? If a customer won't talk about the problem, then how do you know what to talk to them about and how to pitch your unique value proposition? So we'll dive into that a little bit. Okay, so it's hard to talk to customers. I've also got getting buy-in is going to be really difficult as well, right? So maybe let's start there. Let's talk about buy-in. We actually have a question from the chat. Someone says, I'm in Singapore. I run a venture-backed startup. I found it almost impossible to get my investors on board to pivot. So actually, Takashi, you just mentioned this. So let's start with you. What do you do if your ecosystem, the people supporting you, are not bought into lean and don't want you to pivot?
Actually, that's the situation. Typically, I also came across, and actually, one of the idea or the recommendation would be that, first, of course, try to let the board understand what is lean startups and what is pivot and why it makes sense for startups in which people is searching for a business model, scalable, repeatable business model, as Steve described. But if you find it difficult to convince your board member to follow the lean method, then I may recommend that maybe just stop convincing and just doing it in a lean way. And when you have to pivot, then try to tell them the pivot together with the tested hypothesis after pivot. If you bring a new plan to the board, which is really more new plan, then they won't accept it. But I think investors are often patient when you get the customers who may be different from customers you are originally target. And in that case, even if you pivot, but you already have a kind of some proof for new hypothesis, then you can be accepted. And they will be delighted if you get a purchase order for the different product from what you originally planned to build. But if you have the purchase order, I think they will just accept it, regardless whether you do lean or not.
Mm-hmm. So the way you're describing it, I wonder if in some ways it might actually be a benefit to have a board that's not letting you pivot, because now what you're saying is basically traction talks. You want to move, you're going to have to go and be as lean as you can and be as quickly as you can to go prove that you need to. And so you're not going to get a board to agree to dedicate a bunch of resources to a new project. So you're going to have to go on your weekends, going to go interview some people, going to try and get their money, and then see if it's worth pivoting. Is that about right, Kevin? I see you giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, I totally agree with Takashi. So here's how I sum it up. Talk about tactics and not ideas. So if you walk into your board, your co-founders, and you say, hey guys, look at that book right there. Read this. This is what we're doing. Like, nobody wants to hear that. It doesn't work in Silicon Valley, and especially it's a little bit easier now that we've been talking about this for a couple of years. But even as of 2 years ago, it was still very hard in the U.S. to get people to buy into the idea. So talk about, if you're having a hard time bringing your board around, your co-founders, my first advice is don't try to convince them to, buy into a whole new process. Talk about tactics and talk about issues. So, hey guys, instead of saying, we need to validate this particular market segment to determine if our value proposition is going to work, you can just say, guys, I don't know if anyone's going to buy this. Before we build any more, why don't we go talk to these people and just to see if we're building the right thing? Let's just go have a meeting. And Takashi nailed it perfectly. Like when you're dealing with your board, like I guarantee you, if you bring in money, evidence from the market, unless they're crazy, they're going to be smart enough they're going to listen to that. So bring facts, bring data. Go out and talk about tactics. Don't talk about ideas. And for God's sakes, don't put the smart white middle-aged white guys from America on a pedestal and say these guys got all the answers, because we certainly do not.
Amen to that. Amen. Okay, fantastic. So we've got some people on board now, theoretically. Happy to take other questions, by the way, if you want more specifics on that, because I know that's a really big subject. But let's say we got our team on board. Now it's time to get out and start talking to some people. It's time to either get the introductions necessary or find a comfortable way to meet with people, and then B, get them to open up about problems. So Kevin, what do you think? Where should some folks start to go do that in cultures that aren't as accepting as the US?
Okay, the audio broke up a bit for me, so just mention something in the chat room if you can't hear me. So here's some context on customer development. Customer development for 99% of the world is kind of weird, right? Because you're sort of in somebody's office, and well, are you in my office to sell me something? Well, maybe. Kind of depends. Like if we like it, maybe I'll sell you something Sunday. But I'm not really here to talk about that. And instead, I'm here to talk about your problems. And so it's just, even in the U.S., unless you happen to be like on 101, people just don't get why you're there talking to them. So what I suggest people do is don't, and I can share a blog post I've written on this specific topic, is don't think of it in terms of like, I'm going to talk to you about your problems, or I'm going to discover something. Think of it as having a meeting and a conversation. And you're just two professionals where you're going to talk about an industry and an issue. And the more you can bring to the table to them and help share with them about what you're learning, the more that they're likely to open up. Now, I'm going to say that with some caveats, because I know sometimes in China that's not totally true, but for the most part, in most situations, if you can bring information to the table and let them open up by sharing, then people are more likely to reciprocate. For instance, instead of saying, tell me about the problems you guys are having with sales, you can talk about the industry and say, well, I've been researching this problem, and I talked to this company, this company, this company, this company, and it seems like companies that are in your position are running into this problem, getting sales and traction from these kind of customers here. Well, how's it working for you guys? And suddenly you've turned the whole conversation around, and you're not pulling information from them. You're sharing things with them, and you're just two people that are having a meeting about a topic. And people are more likely to engage and open up in a conversation at that point. And they're more likely to let their guard down when they don't feel like they're just being stolen.
That's great. That's great. It actually reminds me of when I was just getting started in the healthcare space. I didn't know anybody, and the very first thing I did was a webinar, something like this, on Twitter. This newfangled thing called Twitter, where everyone was sharing what their baby threw up the day before. And it turns out, like providing value, like you mentioned, I was able to build those relationships, and then later ask, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this thing over here." And then I was able to have a conversation about problems. So I think that's spot on as far as provide value first and then try and solve your problem second. Takashi, what do you think? Anything to add to that? Anything that can help people get into a room and start asking about problems?
I think Kevin mentioned good tactics to talk about in front of the customer to which you are doing an interview with. Other than that, I think try to draw the customer voice as much as possible, as long as possible, by throwing different questions. When we do the customer interview, I try to expand the one simple question into a different direction by asking 5W1H. So in what situation you face that problem, and with who you feel that problem is difficult and something like that. So in that way, you can find point customer may start talking to you, and other than these tactics, my recommendation to do the customer interview or the customer development itself is to do in a team instead of solo. Because as all of us knows that talking to customer, talking to unknown people is not easy. So and sometimes frustrating because the customer don't talk to you honestly or don't talk to you much. But in that kind of a tough situation, if you have a team, then we can kind of encourage each other, resulting the number of the customer interview is increasing. I see that situation a lot when I teach customer development in Japan. So do a team, and instead of doing that in a single or the solo.
Interesting.
That make sense?
It sure does. Just real quick, we get a little specific though? What changes when you're in a team that makes it easier to go find customers who will talk about their problems?
Yeah. Basically, the more people, then the more chance to find their customer to talk to, and also if you, it is like a team sport. So if one of the team member face the situation he cannot find a customer, then other team member can kind of encourage other help them to do that, and
Gotcha. Okay, fantastic, great. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go over one other question from, we've got the Ustream channel. I've got someone here who's asking. I think this is more about raising funds than lean. So let's give it just a little bit of time. Let's address it, and then we'll hop back onto the lean question. But I'd like to hear about the Series A crunch in Asia. It's 100 times worse than in the Valley. Here in Singapore, there are very few Series A rounds. So I don't know, give me 30 seconds to 60 seconds for either of you guys want to hop in and chat about Series A crunch that you know anything about.
All right, can I start with this one?
Go, Kevin.
please.
So I have a question for the questioner. Why do we call it a Series A crunch and not a seed round bubble? And I think if you could answer that question, you'll know why we have it. And it's because we've just had a massive number of startups funded at the seed level and not enough A round money to invest in them. The question that we don't, in no other market situation, and I've been in this business for 20 years investing, I've never seen a bubble, which there probably isn't, where people talked about it as the previous round, right? Or people talk about the next round. It's not. We have a seed round bubble, not a Series A crunch, and we have that because everybody expected that there was going to be more money to take it to the next level, and that's the situation. So we have an explosion of accelerators, incubators, angels, AngelList, everybody putting the first money in, thinking it's going to go to the next level, and that's why we have this situation. As far as Singapore specifically, I'm not sure. So here's what I would just wonder is that based on the time that I've done in Singapore, and I've done an investment in a Singaporean company, so I'm a little familiar with the market, that there's just not a lot of Series A funds, period. So I don't know if it's a crunch or the question is the capital is not there yet. I can just tell you that I strongly believe that will change, and you have a great resource. I mean, in my opinion, one of the best in the world, with having JFDI in your backyard, and that's going to attract money and talent to your region. So support JFDI.
That's great. Takashi, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, actually, in Japan, I don't see much about Series A crunch, and there are a lot of seed investment like other countries, but in Japan, I don't see much Series A crunch. But in some sense, it depends on the industry. Like industry like mobile and the internet, I see no crunch in the Series A. But the industry like kind of really R&D oriented startups such as semiconductor or the kind of display or any other devices, they may find a little bit the Series A crunch, but they also don't have much risk money in the seed stage as well. So I'm sorry, I just don't have an insight for the Series A crunch because we don't have it.
Gotcha. Okay, so thank you very much. So we just got another question in that I'm really excited to actually to chime in on myself. But before I answer that, I just want to shout out. We're particularly interested in the problems that you guys are having with lean abroad. So if you've got any specific questions, we've got a list of things that we think are hard when you're abroad, and we'll ramble on about those until the conference starts. But if you guys have specific problems that you're running into, please let us know about them. We want to try and help you solve them. Okay, but we have a question here that says that asks, how do you modify lean startup for non-SV kinds of startups, non-tech, non-VC scale startups? Okay, so this is like sort of a non-tech enabled startup. Let me say that lean works in these scenarios. It just so happens I be in love with a young woman who is a educational psychologist, and she works for the Oakland School District, and she's been trying to start a private practice as an educational psychologist. And lucky for her, but mostly lucky for me, we met when I was crazy into lean, and we were talking about these things, and we've been applying customer development principles to her business from the beginning, and she's crushing it. So the exact same principles apply no matter whether you're tech, whether you're not. It's always about identifying your customers and solving their problems. So how do you identify your customers? You go talk to them. How do you solve their problems? You talk to them. You go talk to your customers, you figure out what problems they have, and then you go solve them. I swear, I'm helping another guy. This young man is helping kids with autism. And this is, again, non-tech enabled and all. It's always the same thing. So his customer segments are parents who are trying to battle the difficulties of helping their child navigate school with severe autism. Exact same thing. So for you out there, I'm convinced this stuff works especially well in non-tech startups. And you guys want to add about your experience with lean in non-tech enabled companies?
I think you said it perfectly, Justin. I don't have anything to add to that. I totally agree.
Awesome.
Yeah. Perhaps lean method is more friendly for non-capital intensive businesses, which you just described, because with a little money you can come up with an MVP quickly. Particularly if you do services, MVP is easy. MVP will be difficult if you are building chips and clean techs and so on. So Justin, I 100% agree with you.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk. We got a couple questions about applying lean in larger organizations. So let's talk about that. Any of you guys have experience trying to educate larger organizations about lean, or mentored people who have? Takashi, we'll start with you if you've got some thoughts.
I recently have some opportunity to do lean startups in a large enterprise, teach employee in a large enterprise who are responsible for building new businesses. And the insight I mentioned before, I mean, do the pivot together with the tested hypothesis is coming from that experience. And in a big enterprise, doing a lean startup method may be more challenge than startup implementing lean startup in the startups, because in a large enterprise you have more stakeholders and managers and executives, and also other departmental sections you have to kind of deal with. If what I see is that if you keep pivoting in the new businesses according to the lean startups, maybe some profit-making department people tell you that why you are keep failing repeatedly, although we are making money, you are losing money. So that kind of how to say inhibitor can be seen in enterprise, which is not seen much in startups.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, any thoughts on that? Like, any thoughts on how to get upper management to at least give you a little breathing room for a little bit as you try and find that traction?
No. Oh, that's why I got out of that job. So, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the next webinar, the next Lean Startup Conference webinar is on this topic.
Defer it to smarter people. Yeah,
Well,
very good.
exactly. So honestly, that's why I don't do that job anymore, because I was unsuccessful at doing that.
Yeah, great. All right, I have no experience in larger organizations, so definitely talk. I think it's Pat PV and Brant are going to be talking on that. So I'll definitely be checking out that webinar with you guys to talk about that. Okay. Question in here about how much time do you spend on idea validation? How do you know when you're done validating? Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I think the way I like to think of this is a process more than an event. And so if you're at any, as you start building a product or an idea, you're going to go through evolutions of this. At first the first one is, does anybody care, right? Like, is this idea good at all? Am I just wasting my time? But even when you start getting paying customers, and even when you get, like, I know friends who've gotten to $1 million in top line revenue, and they're going back and redoing their lean canvas because they're at the next stage and they're trying to test the next level of assumptions. So you're always going to be in this process. So in one sense, it doesn't end. If you're talking about, like, systematically going out and talking to customers, trying to discover something new, what I would suggest is you want to, when you stop learning anything new, stop doing it. That's generally the advice I give. And I've made the mistake of actually doing too much customer development, and where I just spent too many time. Well, I don't know everything. I got to go talk to more people. And in retrospect, I I wasn't learning anything new that was going to affect my next action. That's one answer. And then I have a second answer with Justin, and I talked about this in JFDI. And that is, if you find yourself getting miserable doing it, stop, right? If you suddenly hate it, you're just miserable, go on to something else. And so maybe this is a bit of, like, our view of the world and life perspective, but we both agree that when it becomes, like, truly unfun, stop doing it and do something else.
That's great. Okay, so Takashi, what do you think?
Kevin already described well, but it's a difficult question because validating idea is not like the kind of statistically testing method in the mathematics or whatever. And one thing I keep seeing repeatedly is that if you find really early adopter who actually have a problem you are putting as a hypothesis, then that will be the timing. And when you come across the early adopter who have a serious problem, serious pain in their hand, then the sign is that from early adopter side, they keep talking to you about it because they are really frustrated about it, and so they find somebody who understands their problem. So they want to feel kind of a emphasis with the problem. So if you find early adopter who have a problem, who talk to you without being asked from you, about the pain, then I think that's a sign.
Yeah, I hear you. Real quickly, I'll throw in a new way of thinking about this that I'm coming up with on the spot, and that is if you have to ask yourself if you're done validating, you're not done. So by that I mean, on occasion, I've run into problems where customers are kicking and screaming to give me money to solve a problem. They will not let me keep going. They will not let me do anything else because they found they found some solution to their problem, and that is when I will go and solve their problem. So totally up to you as the founder. If you want to keep drudging through things and if you want to convince people they have problems, me, I'm done with that. I will keep it validating until people like drag me away and say, no, go build this business for me. I just posted a blog post about recruiting, not a business that I ever thought I would be into, but there's such a high demand and such a big problem that it looks like I'm a temporary recruiter now. So anyway, that's what it looks like for me when I'm done validating. Okay, so we have a really fantastic question here. It says, everyone says have conversations with your customers, but no one says how to approach them. Emails get ignored. Phone calls, do I go door to door? So how exactly what's the step-by-step to go talk to a customer? Kevin, what do you think?
So just to make sure I understand the question, so the question is, I want to go start like lean startup today. What should I do first, type of thing? Is that this?
No, the question is, someone's told me to get out of the building, and I'm bought in. How the heck do I actually have that conversation? How do I, do I do an email, but the emails get ignored? Like, what do I need to do? Great
tactics. Yep. So I did a blog post on this as well, which I will be happy to share with everybody. But the way I do it, again, this is on my own experience, is when I start out, I sort of make a list of everybody I know who either has the problem or can introduce me to somebody with a problem. And then after that, it is just raw frickin' work. Doing these customer interviews and the customer development, I've found is one of the most unpleasant things that I can do. It is hard, tough, grueling work. It is not fun. It is, showing up at coffee shops where people blow you off. But it's just a matter of grinding it out. And you meet with people, you test your assumptions, and at the end of it, you ask for introductions to other people. And you just keep going. And I keep a running list, and I've shared the exact system I use. There's probably tools out there you can use as well, where I just continue follow up with people and say, hey, do you know anybody else who can help me with this? And then I try to meet with them, and I just keep going. And if you get into a routine of doing that, having a virtual assistant can be a big help if you have the budget to be able to hire somebody, if you have someone on your team that can help do the email intros and set up the meetings, and you just keep going.
Nice. Fantastic. Takashi, any tactical, practical advice on having a meeting?
When you send an email to the kind of stranger, by just saying that I want to talk to you, so please allow me to make an appointment, and then probably most of the people will ignore and just get it to the garbage. But what I find it works is that when you write up the email more in detail, like who I am and why I am interested in meeting you, and what time, how long does it take to have a meeting, and what kind of question I will ask. Then I think that the success ratio of getting an appointment by sending that kind of email will be higher. In my experience, actually, I wouldn't say more than 50%, but as close as 50%, the email will be responded, even though they won't meet you. But I receive response.
Yeah, great.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually combine this with a question we just got about, hey, I'm doing B2B lean startup and I'm finding it quite challenging to get out of the building. It sounds like this is a common problem, and here is my take on difficulties in getting meetings. That is a good sign. The good sign is that no one gives a I don't know if this is, no one cares about your problem that you're solving. If you send me an email that says, hey, Justin, I want to build you a Twitter robot that goes and spams your Twitter followers with interesting content, you're not solving a problem for me, and so I'm not going to reply back to you. So if you're having a hard time getting people to engage with you, it's likely that you are, to Kevin's point earlier, not providing any value. So take that as feedback. Shit, I couldn't get anyone to reply. I'm talking about this particular problem and no one replied. Good, move on, do something else. Get out of the business of convincing people they have a problem. To this point, I used one of my MVPs. People, I think we have a question here about what does an MVP look like for a B2B. Here's an MVP. It's a cold email. The cold email says, I'm trying to solve this problem. Will you talk to me? That's all I'm trying to do, right? I'm just trying to validate, will X number of people reply to this email that says I'm trying to solve this problem? And I did have, Takashi, I actually had 50% response rate to a cold email because the problem was so intense. So that's my experience. And then go provide value. Everything in this world, if it has to do with another human doing some action on your behalf, you must solve a problem for them first and then ask for the value that you want. So in this case, Takashi's right. An email that says, hey, let me take time off of your busy day to solve my problem is just never going to work, right? Sure. Kevin was mentioning earlier, hey, I've got some insights on this particular problem that you have. Do you want to chitty chat? You might do better there. Okay, so if we've got that covered, someone has a great question here about, hey, I want to know what options do I have to validate a global market where I don't have the options to experiment face-to-face. Maybe I can't have conversations face-to-face, or maybe it's hard to get in front of my customers. What do you guys think? Someone's going to try and take a bigger market than they have at home, and they want to try lean. What suggestions do you guys have in that scenario? Kevin, any thoughts?
I'd like to hear what Takashi says.
Good. Takashi, what do you think?
Okay, yeah, actually, I do not have much experience, but what surprising me was that when I teach lean startups in a certain university for undergraduate students, and at that time, one of the team came up with a product idea that solved the problem of the people outside Japan. So their business model is looking at not domestic market but overseas market from the beginning. Yep. And at that time, I thought that it's gonna be a very tough because they are undergrad students in domestic university and they have no network with the overseas people in the overseas. But what I was impressed was that with a young energy and maybe how to say kind of a energy, they try to find the interviewee by Facebook or maybe by tweeting, and then they get some appointment with the people in the overseas and do the customer interview by Skype. So there is no technique, but what I thought was, it can be done even for the undergrad student who don't have an acquaintance in the overseas market. So that's my experience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Look, the truth is, even for people in large markets, it's not as if I know everyone in the large market. It's not as if I'm going to have face-to-face meetings with everyone in the large market. It's the same. It's going to be the same game, right? You're going to have time zone differences, but you'll stay up nights. You'll be fine. So a couple other very tactical pieces of advice. Number one, I love the Twitter. That's cool. Mechanical Turk is the other place you're going to go if you want to talk to people in the United States. I got a blog post about how to interview people on Mechanical Turk. Go read that. It'll tell you exactly how to have conversations of the B2C nature for Mechanical Turk. The other is TaskRabbit. go look up TaskRabbit, and if you don't know what that is basically a human being will do something for you in some other part of the world. So I've never tried this myself, but there's no reason why you couldn't have a TaskRabbit go put up a bulletin board in a college dormitory for you, or have this person go down to the subway and post some signs up for you. So get creative. Don't think just because you're outside the market that you are limited. You have the same problems that we all do. Kevin, you wanna
Yep.
throw one more thing?
Yeah. Just I would encourage you to use the other market though as a last resort, because I mean, these are tactics you can use if you want to get there. But let's not kid ourselves; it is a lot harder. And I would, especially if you're not a native English speaker, I would say that Americans have a hyper fine-tuned filter for non-native English speakers because our emails are spammed constantly. So if your English is not perfectly, 如果你的英文不太地道, if your English is not perfect and authentic, we're like looking at every word, and even if I see something like footballer instead of football player, I'm like, whoa, nothing around here, scam. I mean, and it's just because Americans are overwhelmed with scams and spam. So keep that in mind, that even if you're just going to email reach out people, that you're gonna meet a lot of just skepticism over electronic communication.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we've got a great question here. Great because it complements my blog, so that's why I'm going to read it out. Okay, so now I can't find it. Basically, it's like Justin's blog kicks ass. What else kicks ass on the internet? So what do you guys think? What other resources are there available for people to learn Lean and practice Lean in their locale? Kevin, yeah, fire away. Yeah.
Who's going first, Justin?
Kevin is.
Yeah, please.
Okay, Kevin. So I would encourage you to. There's so many resources out there. So the first thing I would encourage you is find the local thought leaders in your community. Obviously you won't have to go very far if you're in Japan. You already know who it is. But look around in your community, and I'll try to post some of the folks up there who I've had a chance to work with. Khalil Corazzo in the Philippines is a great example. If you're in JFDI, if you're in Singapore, obviously Ray Wu and the GFDI folks are fantastic. And in almost every community, you're going to find a college professor in the entrepreneurship community, a VC, an angel, and somebody who's reading this stuff, gets the big picture and says, okay, this is great, this is how we do it here. Like, I would encourage you, that's the first person, and ask that person about meetups, about resources, about anything else where you can find like-minded people and start working together. And take what you hear from the outside and make it yours. That's my first recommendation. Beyond that, for when you're reading stuff, if you're going to look to sort of the thought leaders for conceptual stuff, then I would say stick with the people who are really pushing the edge on the concepts, and that's like Takashi, Eric, Ash Mori is great, and of course Steve Blank, who's sort of the father of all this movement. So those kind of guys, and beyond that, when you start getting into tactics and what's working and what's not, I would read the blogs by the people who are both doing and teaching. Because if you're talking about this stuff and you're not actually doing it, and I don't mean doing it for your clients, I mean doing it on your own products, your own money, or your own sweat and tears, your people that are talking about their failures, those are the people that are going to give you the best insights. Joel Gascoigne's blog on Buffer, his stuff is great. Rob Fitzpatrick, at the risk of, although Justin doesn't seem to mind pitching his blog, Justin's stuff is awesome, and I do my best to try to share mostly my failures. But those are and I'm sure there's some other great examples, and I hope people will post some of those in the chat stream here so that I can learn about content that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, Kevin's blog is phenomenal. It's definitely one of the very few blogs that I read, and I definitely respect him. And if nothing else, that the content is great, but also that he's just such an open book and such a genuine entrepreneur, and it's so great to get to see the world through his eyes. Okay, hey Takashi, what do you think? Resources that people can practice and learn Lean.
Yeah, as Kevin described, here in I know more in Japan, so I will talk about Japan. But in Japan, the number of the blogger who talk about the lean startups according to their direct experience or the strategy or the tactics are increasing, and so the blogger like Wanami-san and Kuranuki-san, and also I also have an own blog called www.castdev.jp, and there are much more you can find, and so those blog posts are abundant with lot of know-how and tactics who are unique to the local environment. So, of course, it is a great idea to see the video in maybe the Lean Startup Conference in the past, and also the Steve's Udacity Lean Launchpad class. But looking at the looking at the blogs in the local community is sometimes helpful because of the uniqueness to the local.
Awesome, great. Okay, a couple more resources I'll just throw out. Lean Startup Circle, check out one and start it if there isn't one near you. Startup Weekend Next is a program dedicated to this sort of stuff. Check that out. And then all the classes. If you can't find anybody else, run a geo search on Twitter. Say, I want to search for anyone within 50 miles of me who's tweeting about Lean Startup. Okay, so we're at time, but I'm cheating. I'm going to steal more internet than we're allowed, and because I want to go really quickly, I want to talk about what advantages do people have on the practicing lean that outside the valley. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds apiece. Advantages people have outside the valley practicing lean. Kevin, rock and roll.
You have the chance to be unique because there is going to be less competition, and there's a reason why guys like Steve Blank and Dave McClure are flying all around the world and going to every city, because they know that where you are is the future. I won't say that America is the past, but America is built. And people talk about how intensely competitive it is in China. It is insanely competitive in the United States. We're stealing ideas from each other all the time. You have a unique opportunity to make a big impact where you are, whereas in America, I'm just another dude.
Awesome. Takashi, advantages of being outside the valley.
The country like Japan, basically once people buy the lean, then they do so relentlessly. And I heard that in the Silicon Valley, which is the roots of the lean startup, but the people are not implementing all of the lean method from A to Z. But I understand that the lean method is systematic and also integrated approach. So just focusing on A/B testing won't help, in my understanding. So in that sense, doing the culture to do the things relentlessly will be advantageous in the lean startup context. And by building a hypothesis and testing it with MVP and customer, running a build, measure, run loop, fast, cheap, continuously will be the key. And that kind of culture will help to do that.
That's great. All right, and I'll just end with the advantage I think you've got outside the valley is that you are doing lean more than people in the valley. People in the valley still think that lean startup is like cheap startup or bootstrap startup. They don't get it. So if you're watching this, you have a leg up on the people in the valley. All right, guys. So thank you so much for taking the time. I think we're going to just wrap it up here, and we may be able to answer some of the questions that we didn't get to offline or through some other means. But yeah, I think we're ready to rock.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. This wraps up our show. Please join us again for the next webcast, Lean Enterprise, Bringing Lean to Established Companies, on October 8th. In the meantime, visit leanstartup.co for more information on the Lean Startup Conference, December 9th through 11th in San Francisco. Bye-bye.